And so we just wanted to highlight this point because knowing that, it might also help you kind of look for different employment opportunities, as having the legal background that you do, that'll kind of put you in a different tier and a different area to look for employment options as well. So we're going to talk about how to find these opportunities. I've mentioned USAJOBS.gov. How many of you are familiar with that website? Okay, great. That is excellent to see. We'll talk a little bit more about some tips on navigating that website, but that is typically where all job postings that are available that are competitive in government, it's a requirement that they be posted there. So if you go there, chances are, if there is an opening available, chances are you will find it there. You can also go to agency websites, and that's typically where they'll post. You might find them posted in both places, but also those occupations or jobs that would fall into the category of being accepted service, those might be posted just on agency websites because they're not required to make it open to everyone. You can work through your career development center and then other, job posting opportunities, PSJD, and so forth. And so finding the right fit. Oh, there we go. Finding the right fit. So again, just to reemphasize, I really thought that the panelists have done a great job about emphasizing passion for the work that you do. And so there's a lot of different ways to approach your job search. But if you find that you're really passionate about a certain subject matter or a certain kind of demographic and you want to really be an advocate for that, there are many missions across the government. There are over 380 agencies and subcomponents. And so that's a lot of different opportunities that you have to help with everything from immigration to civil rights to labor. And so consider the right fit for you as you look through federal service. Because there is so much out there, it'll really help you to focus and hone in on what would be most meaningful for you. And with that, we're going to go through some just tips for navigating USA Jobs. Now, how many of you have a USA Jobs account? Okay. So about a third of you. That would be my first recommendation, is to create an account. It doesn't cost anything. It's not that difficult or cumbersome. And after you create an account, it'll allow you to, one, build and save resumes in the system itself, as well as automate searches that you can get alerts for. And so you don't have to visit the website every day or re-enter your search every time, but you can actually have that just sent to you, and you can decide the frequency as well, daily, weekly, monthly, so that you're hitting or you're being alerted to those opportunities that are of interest. And then there's also quick links at the bottom of the page, and this will connect you to the Pathways program opportunities. So what we talked about with student internships and recent graduate programs. And then PMF actually operates their own separate site that you can go to. So that would be another link that you can get to through here. Once you start your search, there are really helpful kind of fields to help narrow your search, both by location, by salary or GS level. You can narrow it by the department and agency. So if you know you want to work for a certain department because of their mission, you can kind of enter those basic search functions and then see what your results are, and then again, work to narrow it. And then once you've done a search and you feel like you like some of the results you're seeing, but maybe now's not the right time to apply, or you just want to keep seeing what comes up, you can save the search, and then having an account will allow it to send you alerts for the searches that you save. And then if you were to enter something like attorney, of course, it would pop up a bunch of different hits. And so if you find something that really speaks to you, then you can just click on the link that says more like this, and it'll help you, again, further narrow it so that you're seeing things that are most applicable, most relevant to your interests. And then if you go into just kind of their advanced search functions, something I wanted to mention was that, so for legal fields, for every field actually in government, for different occupations, they have an occupational series. And so the legal field has a certain occupational series, and that just means when you look at the actual vacancy or the position description, the announcement, there'll be like a code of letters and words. It's GS and then a series of numbers, and that is actually tied to this. And so if you go to this website, you can see if you're looking for something that falls into the general legal field, then you could actually search by these number choices, which will help you again to narrow it and pull out those things that are most relevant. And I know we'll be circulating some of these resources afterwards, so this is something you can definitely refer to later. But if you're interested in everything from like a law clerk position to again, the specialist legal assistant series, there's these different number combinations that you can enter, and this can be another effective way of searching all the many opportunities that are available out there. So aside from USA Jobs, there are also some additional resources. And on the table out in the front, I did bring just a brief one-pager that has some highlights from the Pathways programs, as well as a listing of some of the resources here on this slide. But USA Jobs, again, everything on the left side basically will post job postings. But on the right-hand side, the gogovernment.org website is actually a website that the partnership maintains. And that's primarily geared towards students. So students who are interested in government service, but really maybe you have no idea of what's available, what to consider, what to look at. You can go to that site, and there's some really easy, user-friendly guides, and from everything of saying, okay, my undergraduate degree was actually in economics. So you click on economics, and it'll give you a list of different job titles and agencies that kind of employ people with that background, or with your legal background now. We have different guides for different degrees and specialties that you may have received. And so I think it just gives you another lens through which you can look at federal service opportunities and figure out where the right fit might be. You can look at their missions and other things as well there. So there's a lot of helpful resources for students and job seekers, but we don't post any job listings on that website. The other website below it is the bestplacesToWork.org. I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but that is an annual rankings that we do of the agencies, of government agencies here. And so if you're interested perhaps in working for a certain department or agency, you can go on there and see the scores that their employees have in ranking them in terms of their satisfaction with their workplace environment, with the work-life balance, their satisfaction with leadership. And so it has a lot of statistics. And so if you're considering employment at a certain agency or organization, we encourage job seekers to also use this as another resource and tool for you to just gather more information so that when you make those decisions, you kind of empower yourself with that knowledge. And then the Office of Personnel Management is another great resource for just understanding some broader hiring trends, regulations, and policies across government. That is everything I wanted to highlight with you today, and I'll turn it back over to Jaya.
Thank you, Sandra. So I definitely want to jump right into questions to be mindful of time. I just wanted to quickly remind you, Sandra did mention some resources, and I think the concrete tips she provided about how to search on USAJOBS is very helpful because I think people, law students and people in general often struggle with navigating the website. Christina had also mentioned a terrific USAJOBS walkthrough that Katie Dilks here at Georgetown Law School put together, so that's another great resource. So I do want to provide time for questions. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we do have a mic at the front of the room. You are welcome to approach the mic and ask your question, or you can even ask from where you're sitting, but just project your voice. So any questions?
Good evening.
Hi.
I was just wondering if there are any fellowship opportunities out there that host international work. So for people who want to do projects overseas or who want to work with the organization overseas. Thank you.
So the question, in case anyone didn't hear, was if there were any fellowships that host international work, so work abroad. Can anyone speak to that?
Maybe an audience member
Yep.
can.
Can you-
Right.
So either international work, so work abroad, or domestic work that serves
People
beneficiaries abroad, right?
So I think that there's an organization. I don't want to. If somebody knows better than I definitely don't want to offer something. But my organization has grappled with the question of whether or not to offer international fellowships for years, and it's not currently in our mission. It's not currently what we're trying to do. But as a result of grappling with that question, I've heard of is it PillNet? That that is the name that is coming in my head whenever you say international fellowships. That I think they have. Yes, Christina.
So I actually just had to do this search on PSJD, another plug. So we have on PSJD, but right off the top of my head, the Fulbright program, the Clinton Public Policy, well, it's not Clinton Policy anymore, but the Clinton, what is it, something?
Clinton Foundation. So Fulbright, Clinton.
Partnership with foreign government, so if you want to do policy work, if you want to do government work, and then the Yale Public Interest Initiative will fund international work, and you don't have to be a Yale student or a Yale graduate for that one, and the Berkeley Law Foundation
Right.
will also fund international
Yale and Berkeley.
You don't have to be a law or a student.
Great. And then the other thing is, I know that big international organizations have legal internships and legal jobs fellowships kind of coming out of law school. Because I have just personally friends that have worked either at like International Red Cross or different UN committees, things like that, that are abroad. Or they have fellowships, I know, at The Hague for the International Criminal Court. I have Georgetown colleagues that have done that.
And the PSJD site, again, does have an international careers section. So I'm not sure to what extent there are fellowship opportunities, but if you are interested in public interest careers abroad, I would also check that out as well. Any other questions?
So I actually have two quick questions. The first one is, if you do one of these fellowships, what are sort of the typical career paths that people usually take afterwards? Do people usually stay in nonprofit, or how easy is it to transition into like a federal or state and local government job?
Sure. I do know that, as I mentioned earlier, 80% of our fellows, at least we know, stay in some form of public interest. We do find it common for organizations to work with their fellows to keep them on. Like Patty said, the Legal Clinic for the Homeless has had a wonderful track record of doing that. And at least with our program, that is an important factor when we're evaluating whether or not a host organization can support someone. We actually ask the question now, how many times have you sponsored or hosted a fellow before? And how many times were you able to actually keep them on afterwards and keep their project on afterwards? In terms of them moving to more of like a government or policy position, I think that just depends on what their personal career path is. We have many fellowships that are advocacy-based or policy-based, where they're really working with legislation or working to change big picture policies. And a lot of times that gets them working with government entities, and they end up going that way. So it's not uncommon, I would say. But I don't know if you
I
want to
think
speak.
Sterling had also mentioned this idea that the fellowships are really designed to launch your public interest career, and I really do think that's what they do. I mean, they're intended and designed to launch your career and to give you a skill set and experiences that will help you go to the next step. And so I think a lot of it is really about sort of the skills that you're able to build and the narrative that you're able to create for yourself. But from my knowledge and working with folks, it's folks who end up doing these fellowships end up moving on to do varied but quite successful things. I don't know.
We just have two examples. One of our fellows, their sponsor, the law firm sponsor, loved them so much that they continued to fund this person outside of the Equal Justice Work structure for 2 years, and then that became a permanent project of ours. And another of our fellows so impressed one of our supporters that they anonymously donated funding to continue that fellow's work for 2 years after her fellowship ended.
And then, so you mentioned EJW has a loan repayment assistant program, and that's great for the 2 years, but do you know of any others that support public interest employees after that?
Any fellowships
Any
programs that?
like loan, like
Sure.
repayment?
So,
So I should have mentioned, Skadden also has a very generous loan repayment program during the 2 years of the fellowship, and they pay 100% of my loans every month. And then afterwards, it really depends where you are. If you're practicing in DC, DC has a public interest LRAP program for people there's a separate one for people who live in DC and another one for people who work in DC, which people who live in DC and work in DC are also qualified for. Many law schools have LRAP programs.
Many employers will have their own.
Yeah, employers can have LRAP programs in Chicago. Like, I remember that the Sun-Times has it.
Yeah, and the Chicago Bar Foundation, it's sponsored by the Sun-Times.
Oh, okay.
Chicago, sometimes through the Chicago Bar Foundation, they do it.
Yeah. So
And
there's
Maryland
plenty
has
of
like the
research
Maryland
there.
Higher Education Commission.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So there's a lot. I would actually advise you to also consult with your career services office because they could give you a really comprehensive overview of what's available to you given your circumstances and where you are geographically.
Right. And if your career services, if your law school does not currently offer LRAP, talk to Equal Justice Works. That's a lot of what we do. We actually go around and teach law schools how to start their own LRAP programs. And when we started, there were 2, and now there's over 100.
There's also the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So
Thank you so much.
Sure
And-
thing.
And then, because my friend is too shy to ask herself, she would like to know if there are any fellowship programs that are specific to helping Native American populations.
I would search on PSJD.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do know that we have had multiple funded through Equal Justice Works for Native American rights or just generally. And Christina's standing up.
You have to look on PSJD and look under Indian and tribal law. I don't know
Yeah.
the name, but I know because I had to correct our posting. So yes.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Other questions? Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank all of our panelists once again. And thank you to all of you for coming out to this event tonight. I'm not sure if any of our panelists are able to stick around for just a few minutes if you want to ask an individual question, but we wish you the best of luck as you continue to explore postgraduate public interest fellowship opportunities. So thank you so much for coming.